If Game 1 was discovery, Game 2 is declaration. For one night, the New York Knicks and San Antonio Spurs spent their time searching for answers, testing limits, measuring strengths, learning what survives under the pressure of the NBA Finals. Now, they know. The Knicks know they can win here. The Spurs know they let one get away. A 14-point lead vanished. Home court advantage vanished. And suddenly, a championship series that began with promise now carries urgency. For New York, belief continues to grow. For San Antonio, the response must begin tonight. The legends are watching. The stakes are rising. The margin for error is shrinking. The feeling out process is over. The finals have found their rhythm. And now, we find out who can handle it. The New York Knicks, the San Antonio Spurs. Game 2 of the NBA Finals. And greetings from our Temecula studios. Ready to block with you for Game 2 of the NBA Finals between the New York Knicks and the San Antonio Spurs. Well, 48 hours ago inside the Frostbank Center, the New York Knicks reminded the basketball world why belief can be such a dangerous thing. Down 14 points in the second half, facing a Spurs team that had never lost a Game 1. New York did what great teams do. They stayed close. They stayed composed. And when the moment arrived, Jalen Brunson took over. 30 points, 13 in the fourth quarter, and a Knicks victory that stunned a city, silenced a crowd, and put the franchise 3 wins away from its first NBA championship since 1973. Now for San Antonio, the mission is simple. Respond. Victor Wembanyama's finals debut showed flashes of brilliance, but also frustration. 26 points, 12 rebounds, and by his own admission afterward, not nearly good enough. Tonight, the face of the Spurs looks to remind everyone why this organization won 5 championships and why so many believe another banner could be on the horizon. The legends are here. Tim Duncan, David Robinson, Manal Ginobili, Patrick Ewing has made the trip from New York. We've seen Spike Lee, Ben Stiller, Timothy Chalamet is in the building. The basketball world is watching, and for the Knicks, it's a chance to take complete control of this series before heading back to Madison Square Garden. For the Spurs, it's a chance to protect their home floor and prevent the finals from becoming a New York celebration. Benjamin Zion not joining us tonight, so more on this game in a moment, but first here's what's trending in the NBA. First, the league's long-running investigation into the Los Angeles Clippers and star forward Kawhi Leonard appears to be nearing its conclusion. Commissioner Adam Silver confirmed this week that the investigation is far along as the NBA examines allegations that the Clippers may have circumvented salary cap rules through a sponsorship agreement involving Leonard and the now defunct company Aspiration. Leonard, his uncle, and advisor Dennis Robinson, Clippers owner Steve Ballmer, and several executives have all been interviewed. The Clippers continue to deny any wrongdoing, and Silver emphasized that any decision will be based on facts, not public perception. Meanwhile, fan behavior has become a major topic during the finals. A spectator who ran onto the court during Game 1 and attempted to take a selfie with Spurs superstar Victor Wembanyama has been arrested and permanently banned from every NBA arena. A second individual involved in the incident also received a lifetime ban. The disruption briefly stopped play late in New York's victory. The NBA is also reviewing a separate incident involving Knicks star Jalen Brunson. League officials are investigating an interaction between Brunson and a courtside fan during the final minute of Game 1. Brunson appeared visibly frustrated and spoke to veteran referee Scott Foster both during and after the game. The NBA has not yet commented on potential findings And finally, the finals could soon welcome a historic guest. President Donald Trump announced he has accepted an invitation from Knicks owner James Dolan to attend a game at Madison Square Garden next week, potentially becoming the first sitting U.S. president to attend an NBA Finals game. League officials say additional security measures are already being planned for Game 3 in New York. Tip-off just 29 minutes away from Game 2 of the San Antonio Spurs and the New York Knicks inside the Frost Bank Center. San Antonio has been a great host, and we're looking forward to seeing what Game 2 brings. The atmosphere, though, has changed dramatically in just 48 hours. When this series began, the conversation centered around the Spurs, the young superstar Victor Wembanyama, and a franchise looking to launch its next dynasty. But after Game 1, the spotlight belongs to the New York Knicks. Captain Clutch, Jalen Brunson, delivered another signature playoff performance with 30 points. The Knicks erased a 14-point deficit, and suddenly a team that hasn't lost a playoff game in over a month is 3 wins away from an NBA Finals that has eluded them since 1973. And they're also 1 win away from taking complete control of the NBA Finals. New York has now won 12 consecutive postseason games, a history that is crazy. And this history also suggests that a 2-0 Finals lead is often a championship winning advantage. But tonight is where champions respond. The Spurs were dominant at home all season, winning 32-8 in the Frost Bank Center. Wembanyama finished with 26 points and 12 rebounds in Game 1, but also struggled with efficiency and turnovers by his lofty standards. San Antonio believes the problems were correctable, not structural. So Game 2 becomes the ultimate finals question. Was Game 1 the night New York announced itself as the better team, or was it simply the wake-up call for a young Spurs team needed? The Knicks seek a commanding 2-0 lead heading back to Madison Square Garden. The Spurs seek something much simpler, proof that Game 1 was the exception, not the beginning of a trend. So the score says the New York Knicks lead the NBA Finals 1-0, but inside the Frost Bank Center on Thursday afternoon, the conversation wasn't about panic. It wasn't about frustration. It was about perspective. For the San Antonio Spurs, Game 1 represented something they haven't faced often this season, a missed opportunity. A double-digit second-half lead disappeared. The offense stalled. The ball stopped moving. And Victor Wembanyama, the young superstar who has carried so much of this team's rise, endured one of the toughest playoff performances of his career. Yet what makes this Spurs team different is that they have spent the entire season preparing for moments exactly like this. Before training camp even began, adversity was already part of the story. When Wembanyama was returning from a serious health scare that ended his previous season, rookie Dylan Harper arrived carrying injury concerns of his own. De'Aaron Fox battled setbacks before the year even started. A young roster entered the season surrounded by questions and uncertainty. What followed was one of the most remarkable journeys in the NBA. The Spurs weathered injuries. They adjusted to leadership changes. They endured difficult losses and responded with winning streaks. They reached the NBA Cup Finals. They defeated elite competition. They survived playoff challenges that would have derailed many teams. Time and again, they found themselves facing adversity. And time again, they answered. That's why a single finals loss isn't shaking their confidence. This organization understands that championship runs are rarely straight lines. They're built through setbacks, through adjustments, through nights when things don't go according to plan. And perhaps that's why Greg Popovich's message to Wembanyama after Game 1 carried such weight. Not because of criticism, not because of disappointment, but because expectations have changed. The standard is no longer simply being great for a 22-year-old player. The standard is being great on the NBA Finals stage. For San Antonio, Game 1 wasn't the end of a story. It was simply another chapter in a season filled with obstacles they've already proven capable of overcoming. The Knicks may hold the advantage today, but the Spurs believe the lessons learned over a 102-game journey have prepared them for this moment. And now comes the true test of every championship contender. Not how they respond when everything is going right, but how they respond when everything suddenly isn't. A year ago, if you asked what separated the New York Knicks from a trip to the NBA Finals, the answer wasn't talent, it wasn't toughness, it wasn't even health, it was trust. Trust in the players sitting 5 feet away from the action. Under Tom Thibodeau, the Knicks became one of the toughest teams in basketball. They defined what a team in New York looks like. They defended, they competed, they reflected the personality of their coach, but they also carried a reputation that followed them for years, a reputation for riding their starters as hard as any team in the league. When the games mattered most, the rotation often shrank. The stars played heavier minutes. The margin for error became razor thin. And when the postseason became a marathon rather than a sprint, New York simply ran out of gas. It was one of the most controversial decisions of last summer. Thibodeau was out, fired, gone, replaced by Mike Brown. And for a fan base that had watched Thibodeau restore credibility to the franchise, make the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time in 25 years, the move felt shocking. Some thought it was unfair. Others thought it was necessary. But what the front office believed was simple. The next step wasn't about changing the culture. It was about expanding it. Mike Brown arrived with a different philosophy. Not softer, not easier, just broader. He looked down the bench and saw contributors, not insurance policies. He saw Miles McBride as more than an energy guard. He saw Landry Shamet as more than a situational shooter. He saw Mitchell Robinson as a game-changing force. And he saw Jose Alvarado as someone who could swing a finals game if his number was called. And so on Wednesday night in San Antonio, that philosophy paid dividends. When Jalen Brunson limped to the locker room late in the first quarter, every Knicks fan held their breath. The season, perhaps the championship, seemed to hang in the balance. But the Knicks didn't panic, because unlike a year ago, they didn't have to. Jose Alvarado stepped in and immediately changed the game. 7 first-half points, 4 rebounds, relentless pressure, fearless attacks at Victor Wembanyama, the kind of performance that doesn't happen by accident. It happens when players know their coach believes in them before the moment arrives. Landry Shamet added 13 points. Miles McBride delivered 6 points, 4 assists, and a plus 11 impact that won't fully show up in the box score. Mitchell Robinson controlled possessions with rebounds and defensive presence. 28 points from the bench. 28 points that may have changed the trajectory of this series. And perhaps the most important statistic of all isn't points or rebounds. It's minutes. A year ago, New York's bench ranked near the bottom of the playoff field in both production and playing time. This season, they're among the league leaders. It's not a coincidence. That's a philosophy. Because championships are rarely won by 5 players. They're won by 8, 9, sometimes 10. They're won when stars can rest without disaster. They're won when injuries don't become excuses. They're won when the player at the end of the bench is ready for the biggest moment of his life. The Knicks learned that lesson the hard way a year ago. Now under Mike Brown, they're living the benefits of it. And as New York chases its first championship in more than half a century, the story may not be about the names on the marquee. It may be about the names waiting for their turn. Because in these finals, the Knicks' greatest strength might not be who's in the starting lineup. It might be who's standing when Mike Brown looks down the bench and calls their number. Tonight, as the NBA Finals continue between New York and San Antonio, history is guaranteed to be made. 1 championship trophy, 2 teams. But a story that stretches far beyond these arenas and across the Pacific Ocean. Nearly 50 years after the Philippines helped welcome the basketball world to Manila, a player of Filipino heritage will for the first time stand atop the NBA mountain as a champion. In tonight's Hardwood Focus, we bring you a story of pioneers, of pride, and a nation whose love affair with basketball has lasted generations. For generations, basketball in the Philippines has been more than a sport. It has been a language, a ritual, a source of pride passed from one generation to the next on outdoor courts, crowded city streets, and neighborhood gyms scattered across more than 7,000 islands. Long before the NBA became a global phenomenon, long before highlights traveled instantly across phones and social media feeds, the Philippines had already fallen in love with the game. In 1978, that love story reached a historic milestone. The Philippines became the first Asian nation to host the FIBA World Championship, welcoming the world's best players to Manila. For a country already consumed by basketball, it was validation. The sport they cherished had arrived on their doorstep. That same year, thousands of miles away, another piece of history quietly unfolded. A young guard from UCLA named Raymond Townsend was selected by the Golden State Warriors in the NBA draft. His mother was Filipina, and with that selection, Townsend became the first Filipino-American player in NBA history. At the time, few could have known those who were connected. One represented a nation's passion for basketball. The other represented its first footprint inside the game's most prestigious league. Now, nearly 50 years later, those two stories finally meet. Because when the 2026 NBA Finals conclude, one thing is guaranteed. For the first time in NBA history, a player of Filipino heritage will raise the Larry O'Brien Trophy. Whether it is Jordan Clarkson wearing the colors of New York or Dylan Harper representing San Antonio, history is waiting on the other side of this series. And while the championships are often measured by rings and banners, this one carries a different meaning. For Jordan Clarkson, this moment represents the culmination of a journey. When he entered the NBA in 2014, Clarkson quickly became more than just another young guard trying to establish himself in the league. He became a symbol of possibility for millions of Filipino fans who had spent decades watching the NBA from afar. But what separated Clarkson from those who came before him wasn't simply his talent. It was his embrace of his heritage. He didn't just acknowledge his Filipino roots, he celebrated them. He wore the national colors. He represented Gilas Filipinas. He carried the expectation of a basketball-obsessed nation every time he stepped on the floor in international competition. For many Filipino fans, Clarkson wasn't simply an NBA player. He was proof that someone who looked like them, sounded like them, and shared their story could belong on basketball's biggest stage. Now, at age 34, after years of carrying that responsibility, he stands 3 wins away from delivering the ultimate achievement. But if Clarkson represents how far the journey has come, Dylan Harper represents where it may be headed. At just 20 years old, Harper arrived in the NBA carrying enormous expectations. The son of NBA champion Ron Harper and Filipino mother Maria Piazza, he entered the league as one of the most highly regarded prospects of a generation. And unlike many young players, he has never shied away from acknowledging the role his Filipino heritage has played in shaping who he is. What's remarkable is not simply that Harper has reached the finals, it's that he has helped lead his team there. Throughout San Antonio's playoff run, this young player has a confidence that belies his age. On the biggest stages, against the toughest competition, he has looked less like a prospect and more like a cornerstone. For Filipino basketball fans, that's significant, because Clarkson proved they could belong. Harper suggests they can become stars. And perhaps that's why this finals feels different. This isn't merely about ending a drought or checking a historical box. It's about visibility, representation. It's about a child from Manila, Cebu, Davao, Quinzon, turning on the television and seeing something previous generations could only imagine. For decades, the Philippines has embraced the NBA as one of its own. The games air early in the morning. Fans wake before sunrise. They memorize statistics, wear jerseys, debate championships, and follow the league with a passion rivaling any city in America. Now, for the first time, the league's ultimate prize will belong to someone who shares a piece of their story. And perhaps that's the real significance of this moment. Not that a Filipino-descended player is finally going to win an NBA championship, but that future generations will grow up believing it is no longer extraordinary. It is possible. Nearly 50 years after the Philippines welcomed the basketball world to Manila, the game is giving something back. A champion, a milestone, and perhaps the beginning of an entirely new chapter in basketball history. For more than half a century, the Philippines has watched, cheered, dreamed, and believed, from neighborhood courts in Manila to packed arenas in New York and San Antonio. The game has connected generations. When this finals comes to an end, either Jordan Clarkson or Dylan Harper will make history as the first NBA champion of Filipino descent. But perhaps the greater achievement is what comes next, because somewhere tonight a young fan is watching, and for that next generation, the dream is no longer simply making it to the NBA. Now they know it's possible to win it all. The wait for Game 2 of the NBA Finals is over in San Antonio, where the New York Knicks carry a 1-0 series lead after an impressive 105-95 comeback victory in Wednesday night's opener. For New York, the formula has been remarkably consistent throughout these playoffs. Jalen Brunson leads the offense, the defense tightens late, and the Knicks find ways to win. They've now won 12 straight postseason games and have put tremendous pressure on the San Antonio Spurs entering tonight's matchup. San Antonio, meanwhile, finds itself in a familiar position. The Spurs have responded to adversity throughout the playoffs, and they'll look to do so again behind Victor Wembanyama, who posted 26 points and 12 rebounds in Game 1 despite an uneven shooting night. Keep an eye on for a few key areas tonight. The Knicks won the turnover battle, received important production from their bench, and controlled the fourth quarter in the opener. San Antonio believes improvements in ball security and offensive execution could quickly change the complexion of this series. The stakes are obvious. A Knicks victory sends New York home with a 2-0 lead and puts the franchise within striking distance of its first championship in more than 5 decades. A Spurs victory sends the finals to New York tied at 1 game apiece. Here are your keys for Game 2. For San Antonio, get back to Spurs basketball. 24 assists in Game 1 isn't enough. This team is at its best when the ball moves side to side and everybody touches it. Too much standing around in the second half. Number 2, Castle has to be the X factor. Everybody talks about Wembanyama, that's fine, but Stephon Castle has to be the second guy tonight. Give me 20 plus points, attack that rim, put pressure on the Knicks defense. Finally, protect home court. This is the big one. You lose tonight, you're heading to New York down 2-0, and the whole finals change. This isn't a must-win mathematically, but emotionally it's about as close as you get. For the Knicks, don't let Wembanyama get comfortable. He's going to score. We know that. That's not the issue. The issue is making him work for everything. Make every catch difficult. Make every a shot contested. And don't let him become a passer that gets everybody else involved. Win the Brunson minutes. When Brunson's on the floor, you got to win those minutes. When he's off the floor, you got to win those minutes. He's been the best player in this series so far. If he controls the pace and gets to his spots in the fourth quarter, the Knicks are going to be right there again and survive the early storm. The Spurs are going to come out flying. The crowd is going to be nuts. If you're New York, don't worry about winning the first quarter. Just be within striking distance when the game settles down. The Knicks are playing with confidence. The Spurs are playing with urgency. Usually in the finals, urgency wins. But if New York gets this thing into the final 5 minutes tied, I trust Brunson more than anybody on the floor. Tonight's pick in play, Game 2. In San Antonio, the Spurs are laying 5.5 points. Some books have it at 6.5, and the total sits at 214.5. The odds makers are basically telling you they expect a Spurs response tonight. Now, I understand why. They're at home, they're desperate, and Wembanyama's not going to shoot 6 for 21 again. That's not happening twice. But here's my issue. The Knicks have won 12 straight playoff games. They just stole home court, and Brunson has been the best closer in this postseason. So I'm taking the points. And I'm taking the Knicks outright. I think San Antonio plays better. I think it's a one-possession game late. But until somebody proves they can beat New York, I'm not betting against them. Pick Knicks plus the points. Play Knicks money line. Final score Knicks 109, Spurs 106. And suddenly the Garden starts getting ready for a parade. That'll do it for me. I'll see you at halftime. We send you courtside. Mike Marine, Tim Legler, Richard Jefferson, Leah Salters have the call.